Felix.
Hello, Henry. When Mr. Henry Wang, yeah, Henry, when I read your profile, I would describe you as an international advisor, author, expert, and also professional in the energy sector. In fact, Henry had a lot of, as far as I know, Henry he had a lot of the international presentation and also speaking. This time, he will talk about the global trend on the decarbonization technology for the building application. Henry, I pass the time to you.
Thank you, Felix, for speak at this important webinar. I'm very happy to share the work that I've done with the G20, B20 International Energy Task Force, together with the audience here today. Appreciate if YK can move the slides for me. Yeah, if you can move it to the next slide. Yeah, my presentation is based on my 5 books that I've published and 100 papers that I've published globally, together with the work that I'm doing with leading universities and also the G20, B20 task force that are advising the G20 leaders. Next slide, please. Yeah, in this presentation, I plan to cover a few important areas on climate change impacts and the outlook by the G20 task force and our advice to the G20 leaders. But I'll very quickly also focus on Hong Kong's climate plan and particularly on the green building sector and to show how important this is in terms of Hong Kong's plan to achieve net zero by 2050. I'll talk about clean energy transition, energy efficiency, also very importantly, the policy inputs to the Hong Kong net zero plans. Next slide, please. You all know how important climate change is really one of the biggest challenges that is facing the human race and globally at this moment in time. Global temperatures already risen by about 1 degree and is going to go higher if we don't take action together globally. Next slide. And climate change has generated many extreme weather incidents. These include rain, flooding, sea level rises. And in Hong Kong, we've also been suffering some of these with extreme temperature and also typhoons and things like that. Next slide, please. Yeah, in the G20, B20 task force, we have, at the request of the G20 leaders, studied the commitments that are being made by all the different countries, including China and Hong Kong, in the Paris Agreement on the reduction of the carbon emissions. And these needs a lot more actions at this stage, because at the current time, the plan projected carbon emission will not be able to meet the targets. Next slide, please. And we've also studied the different sectors which are emitting, which are the big emitters. And these include electricity, industry, transportation, agriculture. The building sector is also a big sector. And in Hong Kong, this is particularly serious, and I'll talk about this more. Next slide, please. And we really need to take concerted action globally to try to limit the temperature rises. And this is very important that we try to hit the 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees target that is being proposed by the Paris Agreement and UN IPCC. Because if we don't do anything, we could end up with a temperature rise like about 4 degrees C, and that could destroy 30% of the global GDP. These will end up with about 10 months of droughts, flooding in low-lying cities, including Hong Kong, Holland, New York, and severe food risks in different countries in the world. And we can see some of this impacts already, where some foretastes of that during the worst part of the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. On the other hand, if we work together around the world with the G20 countries, then this could lead to actually generation of new economic growth, green employment. And we calculated that this could generate 26 trillions of economic gain. And Hong Kong would be able to benefit from some of these as well. Next slide, please. And in Hong Kong, the government has already published its climate action plan, although a lot of the details have to be worked out. And the main important target date is that Hong Kong plans to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. That's with net zero emission. And this is very, very important date for all of us in Hong Kong, because this is part of our international commitment, and people will be judging Hong Kong's performance based on this. And you can see that these will include 4 decarbonization strategies. It will include net zero electricity generation, energy savings in green buildings, green transportation, and waste reduction. And I'll talk about each of these in more detail. First of all, on electricity, Hong Kong is the electricity generation in Hong Kong at this moment in time is based on fossil fuel and coal, natural gas. And therefore, Hong Kong is a major carbon dioxide emitter with about 43 million tons of carbon dioxide emission from Hong Kong, which is really huge from a small city like Hong Kong. Per capita is about 6 tons of carbon dioxide per person per year from Hong Kong, which is actually very high by international standards. Now, under the government plans for net zero electricity generation, this is expected that we will burn less and less fossil fuel as we come to 2030, and then we will be generating most of this via net zero electricity. This means that we will be importing more clean electricity and also using more green electricity. Next slide, please. Yeah, so of this, we will see that some 60 to 70% of the electricity in future will be imported, say, from China, which will be green or generated by renewable, because China is already the #1 renewable market in the world with #1 installed renewable capacities. And also we will be expanding the renewable electricity and energy uses in Hong Kong, generation in Hong Kong, to about 10% of our total electricity generation. Moving on, the next part, back to the previous slide, please. Yeah, you can see in the right-hand bottom corner is a very important part. A lot of the carbon dioxide emission from Hong Kong is actually from buildings, because the buildings, Hong Kong is very, very densely populated with a lot of high-rise buildings. And these are the major consumer of electricity in Hong Kong. Yeah, and one of the part of the government plan is that there should be major energy saving in these industrial buildings by about 30 to 40% by 2030, and by about 20 to 30% in residential buildings. And these are very, very ambitious targets. And we will need to work together with the government and also with the developers and also the building owners to achieve these very ambitious goals. Next slide, please. The other two areas which are very important is green transport. And you can see that the government plans include the promotion of green transport, including promotion of electricity vehicles and also hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And this is a very important development, which is gathering a lot of speed already in China and also in Europe and in the United States. And very importantly, there will be accelerations of electricity, private cars, and also new energy transportation. At the same time, there's a lot of effort going to go into waste recycling and minimizing waste. This is an area that Hong Kong has to do a lot more. And but the technology are available, and we can learn a lot of this from Europe or from China, where they are more advanced than us in recycling municipal waste. Next slide, please. Coming into the very important area of green building, decarbonization. This is in fact a global initiative that is being championed by the UN. UN IPCC in its latest climate report have proposed that all the cities in the world should decarbonize their buildings as a matter of urgency, because this is critically important for the world achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. And this is also true in Hong Kong. If Hong Kong cannot decarbonize its building, then it will be very difficult to achieve our carbon neutrality target by 2050. And in the IPCC assessment reports, they have highlighted that many cities in the world has already been implementing zero carbon buildings. And we've also some zero carbon buildings initiatives in Hong Kong too, but there has to be a lot more if we want to meet the carbon neutrality target by 2050. And this includes improving the green building heating, cooling, lighting systems. And we also need not only to focus the effort on new buildings, but we need to retrofit older buildings so that these could achieve the green building targets. And a very good source of reference is the UN IPCC Global Climate Report, which was published in April 2022 of this year in terms of green building and decarbonization. Next slide, please. And under the UN, internationally, the green building decarbonization is championed by the World Green Building Council, WGBC. And it has proposed a global net zero building initiative and has called on all the international businesses, organizations of the world to reduce carbon emission. And it has two important aims in terms of decarbonization of building internationally. It has proposed by 2030 that all the buildings around the world should try to minimize their operational and embedded, and that's so as that all the buildings in the world can achieve their carbon neutrality and net zero emission by 2050, which is the Paris Agreement, the goal in the world. So this is very important because buildings are really one of the major greenhouse gas emission sources in the world, and it's critically important to reduce the carbon emissions from buildings globally so as to achieve the carbon emission by 2050 and 2060. Next slide, please. Well, Decarbonization of building will require deep collaboration between all the stakeholders and across the whole value chain of buildings. These would include radical changes to buildings. We need to improve the energy efficiencies of buildings. We have to have new building models to promote circular economy and also improve energy efficiency. We need to cut the energy consumptions of current buildings. All the buildings also have to accelerate their green energy transition by stopping fossil fuel uses, including electricity generated from fossil fuel, and replace these with clean, renewable energy. Next slide, please. Yeah, and Hong Kong is an important part of the global green building decarbonization challenges. And of course, Hong Kong has some special challenges of itself because Hong Kong is a very densely built, has a very dense urban footprint. So the urban planning is very, very important in Hong Kong to contribute to lower carbon footprint of buildings in Hong Kong while maintaining livability for all its residents. We need to really discuss very, very urgently with government and designer what sort of building design and construction strategies are effective in Hong Kong to create super low energy high-rise buildings. And also what are the innovative renewable energy systems that we can install or retrofit to existing buildings in Hong Kong so as to accelerate the green energy transitions of all the buildings in Hong Kong. Also, very importantly, we have a lot of old buildings in Hong Kong. So retrofitting and converting these buildings to low carbon emission buildings in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area is very important. And very importantly, can Hong Kong also become a high density, compact, smart city for the Greater Bay Area and for the ASEAN area? That's very important. And in this aspect, the Hong Kong Green Building Council has set up a Sustainable Development Committee to work with the government and other stakeholders on accelerating and studying different options to decarbonize buildings in Hong Kong. Next slide, please. A very important area to decarbonize buildings in Hong Kong and globally is to improve its energy efficiency and to accelerate its clean energy transition. And these really require urgent action. Building, heating, and cooling accounts for about 35 to 60% of their total energy demand. And buildings, Hong Kong and elsewhere, produces nearly 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in Hong Kong and globally. This is really, really very high. So reducing energy use and greenhouse gas emissions from buildings is really a matter of urgency. And accelerating building clean energy transition is very, very urgent. Next slide, please. And in this area, we need to work urgently with the government and constructors and developers on improving building standards to convert our existing building in Hong Kong and globally to green building standards. We need to improve the heating, cooling aspects. We need to install smart electricity meters in buildings. We need to have smart green building control systems to control the heating and also minimize the energy usage of these buildings. And a lot of these systems are already installed and working and proven technology in Europe or China or elsewhere. So we can in turn we can promote international cooperation in these areas and endorse some of these proven technology in Hong Kong. Next slide, please. And you can see a lot of, in the rest of the world, renewable energy or the clean energy transition already has been progressing very fast. And you can see in this, over the last 10, 20 years, global renewable investment has really been huge. And that's been over 1 trillion of green renewable investment already installed in the world. And looking ahead, 200 billion per year of investment are likely to go ahead around the world. And in this area, Hong Kong has a lot to catch up. Next slide, please. And a lot of, there's been a lot of international advances and innovations in renewable technology. And there's been tremendous reduction in cost in renewable. And in fact, the international agency, like the International Renewable Energy Agencies, already announced that the renewable energies are now cost competitive against fossil energy. So there is no economic reason why we should continue to use fossil energy to generate electricity when it is just as cheap to use renewable energy to generate electricity. And therefore, you can reduce your carbon dioxide emissions as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. And in fact, a lot of the rest of the world has already been accelerating their clean energy transition. And this has resulted in a lot of green business opportunities and low carbon economic growth. And they've created 10 million new jobs already around the world. And these include new jobs in China, new US, and Europe. And Hong Kong can benefit from this if we accelerate our clean energy transition. Next slide, please. And in fact, some areas in Hong Kong, they have been accelerating their clean energy transition. I was invited to speak at a government seminar, and one of the sustainability director of one of the local major international school has also spoke about the green energy transformation in their school. They have installed out of their own cost renewable panels and solar panels on their buildings. And this has resulted in them being able to generate the bulk of their electricity by renewable electricity. And they've also installed traffic lights in their classroom to show their students whether they are now operating on the green electricity or they have to import fossil brown electricity, which is generated from fossil fuel from the city grid. And this has actually led to behavior change in the students because the students actually want to only use the renewable electricity as much as possible. And they have turned off computers and lights and things like that so that the school can operate on the renewable electricity as much as possible. And this is really encouraging because this is installing actually a green mindset in students at a young age. At the same time, the school has also promoted waste reduction. I mean, in their canteen, they have encouraged the students to collect food waste after their meals. And then they put all these waste into a bioreactor, which generates compost for the school organic garden. And this is really promoting circular economy development in this international school. And this is a very good example for the rest of Hong Kong to follow. And we can do the same if we commit ourselves, everybody in Hong Kong commit themselves to it with the right government support and with the right management and with the right organizational systems. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? This is actually very important because, you know, overall, if Hong Kong needs to survive as the world, all the extreme climate conditions, then Hong Kong has to transform itself into a sustainable, smart, green city with, and to achieve its carbon neutrality goal by 2050. Hong Kong has to adopt the smart green city design concept, which is already being adopted by leading cities in the world, including London, New York, and other places. And also in China, they are pioneering many green cities developments, working together with other international cities like Singapore. And at the same time, these could generate a lot of green economic growth and enable Hong Kong to achieve its Paris Agreement commitments and achieving the carbon neutrality and net zero emission target by 2050. Next slide, please. So summarizing, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And in this presentation, I've talked about the impact of the climate change. I've shared with you the outlook of the G20, B20 task force, which shows that climate change is one of the most serious challenges facing the world, and it's very important for all of us to work together to achieve carbon neutrality and net zero emissions by 2050. I've also shared with you the Hong Kong climate plans, which aims to, which sets very important target for Hong Kong to achieve carbon neutrality with net zero emission by 2050. A lot of the details have to be developed. And I've shared with you the global drive for green building and decarbonization of buildings. And these include many ways to improve the energy efficiencies, to convert it to accelerate the clean energy transition, to improve the energy efficiencies. And these are all important part of the smart city transition. And also it helps also the improve education of youth and the green mindset of the population. And of course, these are also very important for all of us to support and promote policy inputs to the government in its climate change action plan. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And I hope that has been a useful sharing, and welcome any questions and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you give us a very comprehensive idea and option also. There's a question from the audience. Maybe I have to read it, yeah, because some of the audience, they do not know the question. There's a question about the cement and steel. Cement and steel are also the major carbon emission sector in the PowerPoint you mentioned in page 10. These materials are very common in the Hong Kong construction and building. What can we do?
Yeah, it is true. I agree. This is a good question. And I agree that cement and steel are very important building materials. And in this area, actually, the cement and steel industries knows that they are major carbon dioxide emitters. And in recent years, there has been a lot of work that are being done to reduce carbon emission from these buildings, from these two industrial sectors. For example, one very important area that, for example, the iron steel manufacturers in China is committed to is to improve the energy efficiency of their blast furnace. And this is one of their major commitments that they have made in the China 14 five-year plan. And this is also an important part of China's commitment to achieve carbon neutrality and with net zero emissions by the 2060. So Hong Kong can benefit from these areas. And of course, a lot of these important, Hong Kong don't have any iron steel manufacturing, but Hong Kong in cement. So in these areas, in green cement and things like that, so Hong Kong can adopt a lot of these green cement practices as well. And therefore, from other industrial leaders around the world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your response. We have another question is, you mentioned that while there are zero carbon building in other cities, but quite rare or not in Hong Kong, is it a mission impossible in the environment of Hong Kong?
No, I don't think so. I think Hong Kong has a lot of potential and advantages compared to other places in the world. Let me give you a few examples. Yeah, Hong Kong has a very good can-do attitude. And this is something, and people has commented on that. You know, politicians and other people in the world have said that Hong Kong has a very good can-do attitude. If Hong Kong people set their mind to achieving something, I think they can achieve this. And very good example, I mean, you know, in recent years, we've been able to grow Hong Kong into one of the major international financial center in the world. We have very efficient and very good financial systems. We have a lot of good talents in these areas. And in these aspects, some of these financial talents are already developing themselves in the green financial area. A very good example is the green bond that is being put forward at this moment by the government and other industrial leaders and other leading companies. And these will continue to grow. And I think this can actually generate a lot of opportunities for Hong Kong. Wow. And in terms of building sector, I think Hong Kong needs to take the same can-do attitude and look at developing new building standards, study the best examples which are being developed in China, in Europe, and across the world, because international green building standards are being developed. They can also study the very important example of green mortgages, which are being pioneered in other financial centers in the world. And these are becoming very popular for new building buyers around the world.
Henry, time is limited and we still have some question for you. Say, for example, we have a question is, do you think that the renewable energy certificate, REC, will play a role reaching the net zero carbon building in Hong Kong? For example, the data center? Maybe a concise answer, yeah.
Yes, I think it will be. This has worked very well around the world, and Hong Kong will need to use all the proven green climate change instruments that has been proven in the world, and Hong Kong can use this.
Okay. Can you share some examples about the energy efficiency equipment in the construction
Yeah, I mean, they have energy efficiency is an important area that people are working a lot to. There's a lot to be improved in energy efficiencies in buildings and in constructions. They can look at how to, for example, improve energy efficiencies of buildings by better insulation. That's an important area. Lighting is another important area by using low energy lighting. That has been used a lot internationally in different countries. And we can look at also the air conditioning settings. A lot of buildings in Hong Kong are very, very cold. And in China already, the building aircon standards are being lifted to 26 degrees C when I go to meetings with governments and things like that. So these are some of the things that we can study in Hong Kong to improve the energy efficiency.
Okay, this one is, I think this is a final question. What major improvement have been made to the fuel cell technology for building so far?
Fuel cell is a big area for development at this moment in time, and more developments will go ahead. And some of these developed fuel cell technologies is already being used in America, in Europe, for generating by particular leading companies in the world like Google, Apple, so that their buildings are completely zero energy and self-energy sufficient. They generate their own renewable and store the renewable energy in their own fuel cells. And these are major achievements that we in Hong Kong can study.
Oh, Henry, thank you for your time and information. Yeah, the time is limited. I have to end your section. Yeah, thank you for your time, for the preparation. Yeah, and share the insight to all the audience. Yeah, thank you. Maybe I will invite you for another topic later.
Thank you, Felix.
Okay.
I'm glad to support the good work that you and the Green Council are doing in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.